Tearful sobs echoed through the war-torn alien city as Sergeant Raymond Freeman saw the terrified Evora child, not knowing that his next actions would change the course of the brutal war and the child's life forever. The battle-hardened soldier patrolled the ruined metropolis on planet Zephyr, once filled with towering spires and gleaming architecture, now reduced to rubble by the vicious conflict between humans and Evora. Raymond crept through debris-littered streets, augmented senses on high alert. His mind drifted to the first contact with the fierce alien species, the escalation of tensions, and the outbreak of bloody warfare. Doubts gnawed at him. Could diplomacy have prevented this devastation? Or were the brass right that this hell is the only path forward? A child's faint whimper snapped him back to the present. It came from a crumbled building nearby. Raymond froze. Every instinct screamed trap. He knew even Evora children train in guerrilla ambush tactics. One wrong move, and he dies in a pile of alien rubble, light years from home. But the soldier's heart twisted at the thought of a child, even an alien one, abandoned and afraid amongst the ruins of its home. If he left it behind, it would haunt him forever, make him question the humanity he swore to defend. Rifle raised, he crept towards the whimpers, ready for anything. Raymond didn't know it yet, but the next few moments would change everything he thought he knew about the Evora and the future of the war itself. If he couldn't save this one child, how could humanity ever hope to end this hell and finally go home? Crumbled concrete and jagged rebar threatened to slice through Raymond's combat suit, with every cautious step he took into the war-ravaged ruins. His augmented senses and helmet scanner pierced through the gloom, guiding him towards the source of the faint, pitiful whimpers that had first caught his attention. The cries grew louder as he approached a dimly lit chamber, his rifle trained on the shadows. There, huddled in the far corner, a young Evora girl trembled in fear, her scales caked with grime and dust. Her eyes, wide with terror, stared up at Raymond as he entered the room. The soldier lowered his rifle and raised his hands slowly. "Shh, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," Raymond said softly in the Evora tongue, the alien words still feeling strange on his lips. "I want to help." The girl's serpentine tail coiled tighter around her small frame, but she didn't flee as Raymond approached and knelt a few feet away. He could see now how her scales had lost their vibrant, iridescent sheen, dulled by days of hiding in the ruins. "What's your name?" Raymond asked gently. "Talon?" the girl whispered, her voice hoarse. Raymond nodded, keeping his movements slow and deliberate as he unslung his canteen and a nutrient bar from his belt. He held them out to Talon, who eyed the offerings warily. "Here, you must be hungry and thirsty. It's safe, I promise." Talon hesitated a moment longer before snatching the canteen and bar from Raymond's hands. She gulped down the water greedily, streams running down her chin, then tore into the nutrient bar with small, sharp teeth. As the girl ate and drank, Raymond assessed her condition. She was clearly malnourished and dehydrated, but didn't appear to be seriously injured. How long had she been hiding here alone? The thought made Raymond's heart ache. "Talon, where is your family? What happened to you?" he asked once she had finished the meager meal. Raymond's mind raced. He knew he couldn't leave Talon here to fend for herself, but bringing an Evora child back to base would be seen as a serious breach of protocol at best, treason at worst. He weighed his options as distant explosions rumbled and his suit's life support systems hummed softly. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a sudden movement in the shadows froze the words in his throat. Raymond's eyes locked onto a pair of glowing, predatory orbs glaring at him from the darkness. A deep, menacing growl reverberated through the chamber, sending icy tendrils of fear down the soldier's spine. Raymond shifted instinctively, shielding Talon with his armored body as he raised his rifle towards the unseen threat. His heart pounded against his ribs as he realized the crumbling ruins harbored more dangers than he had anticipated. The growl grew louder, and Raymond's finger tightened on the trigger, ready to face whatever nightmare stepped out of the shadows. A monstrous beast emerged from the shadows, its form a twisted mix of organic flesh and synthetic enhancements. Raymond immediately recognized it as a Nethound, a bioengineered war creature designed by the Evora to hunt down and eliminate human soldiers with ruthless efficiency. The Nethound's metallic fur bristled with nanites, its hide a living armor that could absorb and dissipate energy weapons fire. Corrosive saliva dripped from its gaping maw, filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence, fixing upon Raymond and Talon with predatory intent. Raymond knew that the scent of his rations must have drawn the creature to their location. He cursed himself for not being more cautious, but there was no time for self-recrimination now. The Nethound coiled its powerful muscles, preparing to pounce. With lightning-fast reflexes honed by years of combat training, Raymond brought his pulse rifle to bear and fired a burst of high-energy bolts at the creature. To his horror, the Nethound's nanite-infused hide simply absorbed the weapon's fire, leaving the beast unscathed. The Nethound lunged forward with blinding speed, its claws outstretched to rend and tear. Raymond barely managed to dodge the creature's initial strike, feeling the rush of displaced air as its talons whistled past his throat. Realizing that conventional weapons were useless against this foe, Raymond activated his suit's emergency thrusters. The sudden burst of acceleration propelled him and Talon out of the creature's reach, sending them hurtling into an adjacent room within the crumbling ruins. Raymond's mind raced as he tried to formulate a plan. The Nethound's growls echoed through the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. He knew that they had only moments before the relentless predator reached their new position. Scanning the room with desperate eyes, Raymond searched for anything that could give them an advantage against the seemingly invulnerable creature. His gaze fell upon a crumbling wall, its structure already weakened by the ravages of war and time. A risky idea formed in Raymond's mind, a gambit that could either save their lives or doom them both. He gently set Talon down, his voice urgent but reassuring as he instructed her to stay hidden and out of sight. With the Nethound's approach imminent, Raymond steeled himself and began to taunt the creature, drawing its attention away from the terrified Evora child. He shouted and waved his arms, making himself the target of the beast's fury. The Nethound's eyes blazed with primal rage as it charged forward, its claws gouging deep furrows into the ancient stone floor. Raymond held his ground until the last possible second, his heart pounding in his ears as he watched the creature close the distance between them. Just as the Nethound lunged for the kill, Raymond engaged his thrusters once more, leaping out of the way with a burst of acceleration. The creature, unable to alter its trajectory in time, slammed into the weakened wall with the force of a battering ram. The impact triggered a localized collapse, the unstable structure giving way under the Nethound's immense bulk. A cascade of rubble and debris rained down upon the creature, burying it beneath a mountain of shattered stone and twisted metal. Raymond wasted no time, rushing to retrieve Talon from her hiding place. Together they fled the ruins, the sound of shifting rubble and angry, muffled snarls echoing behind them as the Nethound struggled to free itself from its impromptu prison. As they emerged into the harsh, unforgiving light of Zephyr's war-ravaged surface, Raymond realized that his mission had become far more complicated than he ever could have imagined. He now faced the daunting task of navigating a hostile, alien environment with a young Evora child in tow, all while evading the myriad dangers that lurked in the shadows of the ruined city. The weight of responsibility settled heavily upon Raymond's shoulders as he looked down at Talon's frightened face. He knew that he could not abandon her to the horrors of this war-torn world, but the path ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty. With a deep breath, Raymond tightened his grip on his weapon and set off into the unknown, the unforgiving landscape of Zephyr stretching out before them like a nightmare made manifest. Every shadow held the promise of new threats, every ruined building a potential ambush waiting to happen. Raymond and Talon crept through the ruined city's winding streets, the eerie silence broken only by the distant echoes of warfare and the soft crunch of rubble beneath their feet. The once vibrant Evora metropolis now lay in ruins, a testament to the destructive power of the ongoing conflict between humans and the serpentine aliens. As they approached a deserted plaza, Raymond's eyes were drawn to a towering statue of an Evora warrior, its stone visage weathered by time and the ravages of war. The soldier's instincts screamed a warning as he noticed strange pulsating pods attached to the base of the monument. His grip tightened on his rifle, senses on high alert for any sign of danger. Suddenly, the pods burst open with a sickening squelch, releasing a swarm of insectoid drones that quickly surrounded the pair. The drones buzzed and clicked, their metallic carapaces glinting in the harsh light of Zephyr's sun. Raymond's blood ran cold as he recognized the machines as Evora surveillance tech, designed to gather intelligence and relay it back to their commanders. If the drones identified him and Talon, their location would be compromised, putting them both in grave danger. Raymond knew he had to act fast. With a deft movement, he activated his suit's built-in EMP emitter, sending out a pulse of electromagnetic energy that washed over the drones like an invisible tidal wave. The effect was immediate. The drones dropped to the ground in a shower of sparks, their systems fried by the powerful electromagnetic pulse. But as the machines clattered to the ground, Raymond realized with growing dread that the EMP had also disrupted his own suit's systems. His HUD flickered and glitched, the readouts distorted and unreliable. Raymond's vision blurred, his senses thrown into disarray by the suit's malfunctioning sensors. He staggered, disoriented and vulnerable, struggling to reboot his suit's critical systems. As he fought to regain control, Raymond felt a small hand tugging at his arm. He looked down to see Talon, her eyes wide with urgency as she pointed towards a nearby building. Despite his compromised state, Raymond allowed the young Evora to guide him towards the structure, which appeared to be an abandoned military outpost. They entered the outpost cautiously, Raymond's suit slowly coming back online as they navigated the dimly lit corridors. Talon seemed to know exactly where she was going, leading him deeper into the heart of the facility until they reached a hidden room. Inside, Raymond's eyes widened as he took in the sight of a trove of Evora technology, its alien design both fascinating and unsettling. Among the strange devices, he spotted a communication device that could potentially allow him to contact his superiors and request extraction. As he set to work repairing his suit and attempting to establish a connection, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to flicker and dance in the dim light, and the air was thick with an unseen menace. A chill ran down his spine as he realized that the outpost may not be as abandoned as it appeared. Had they stumbled into a trap set by the very Evora forces he had been fighting against? The thought sent a spike of fear through Raymond's heart as he redoubled his efforts to get the communication device working. Time was running out, and he knew that every moment they spent in this eerie place brought them closer to whatever lurked in the shadows. Talon huddled close to him, her small form trembling with fear, as Raymond worked feverishly to establish contact with his superiors. The device crackled and hissed, its alien interface stubbornly resisting his attempts to interface with it. Sweat beaded on Raymond's brow as he struggled to decipher the cryptic symbols and glyphs that danced across the screen. Just as he thought he was making progress, a sudden sound from the corridor outside froze him in place. It was the unmistakable click of claws on metal, growing louder with each passing second. Raymond's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that whatever had been watching them was now on the move. As the clacking grew closer, Raymond's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of their predicament. He glanced at Talon, seeing the fear in her eyes, and knew that he would do whatever it took to protect her from the horrors that lurked in the shadows of this war-torn world. The door to the hidden room began to slide open, the darkness beyond seeming to reach out with shadowy tendrils. Raymond braced himself, ready to face whatever nightmarish creature emerged from the gloom. He knew that their survival depended on his ability to think fast and adapt to whatever challenges lay ahead. As the door opened fully, revealing the horror that awaited them, Raymond hunched over the strange Evora communication device, his fingers working frantically to repair his suit systems and establish a connection, Talon's curiosity drew her deeper into the hidden room. The young Evora girl's eyes widened as she took in the sight of the alien technology surrounding them, her natural inquisitiveness overriding her fear. Talon's gaze fell upon a peculiar device nestled among the other artifacts. It pulsed with an eerie green light, seeming to beckon her closer. As she approached, the device reacted to her presence, its glow intensifying and bathing the room in an unsettling emerald hue. Suddenly, a holographic image burst forth from the device, causing Talon to stumble back in surprise. The image coalesced into the form of an imposing Evora commander, its features stern and unreadable. The commander began to speak, its words flowing in a language that Raymond couldn't understand, but Talon seemed to comprehend perfectly. As the commander's message continued, Talon's expression shifted from one of curiosity to a blank, almost trance-like state. Her eyes glazed over, and she stood motionless, transfixed by the hologram's hypnotic words. Raymond, noticing Talon's odd behavior from the corner of his eye, abandoned his work on the communication device and rushed to her side. He quickly disconnected the strange device, causing the hologram to flicker and dissipate into nothingness. Talon blinked, confusion etched on her face as if she had just awakened from a deep sleep. She looked up at Raymond, her brow furrowed, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. Raymond, his concern for Talon's well-being now mingled with a growing sense of unease about the device's purpose and its effect on the young Evora, carefully pocketed the mysterious artifact. He knew that he would need to have it analyzed by his superiors, hoping that it might shed some light on the true nature of the conflict that had engulfed their worlds. Just as Raymond and Talon prepared to leave the hidden room and make their way out of the abandoned outpost, a sudden, violent tremor rocked the building to its very foundations. Debris rained down around them, and the walls shuddered and cracked under the strain. Raymond's eyes widened in realization as he recognized the telltale signs of an orbital bombardment. The human forces often employed this devastating tactic to flush out Evora resistance fighters, leveling entire city blocks in the process. Without hesitation, Raymond grabbed Talon's hand and pulled her close, shielding her with his armored body as chunks of the ceiling crashed down around them. He knew that they had precious little time to escape before the entire outpost collapsed, burying them alive beneath tons of rubble. Activating his suit's emergency beacon, Raymond hoped against hope that his fellow soldiers would be able to lock onto their location and extract them before it was too late. The beacon pulsed with a steady, reassuring rhythm, a lifeline in the midst of the chaos. Together, Raymond and Talon raced through the crumbling corridors of the outpost, dodging falling debris and leaping over gaping chasms that had opened up in the floor. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning plastics, and the ground shook with each new impact from the orbital bombardment. As they ran, a nagging thought gnawed at the back of Raymond's mind. The timing of the bombardment seemed too perfect, too coincidental. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had led them into this trap, using them as pawns in a much larger game. His thoughts turned to the mysterious device they had discovered, now safely tucked away in his pocket. Could it hold the key to unraveling the truth behind the war, behind Talon's role in all of this? Raymond knew that he would stop at nothing to find out, even if it meant risking everything he had ever known. Another tremor, even more powerful than the last, sent Raymond and Talon tumbling to the ground. Raymond pulled Talon close, covering her small body with his own as the world around them collapsed in a deafening roar of twisted metal and shattered stone. In that moment, as the darkness closed in around them, Raymond made a silent promise to himself and to Talon. No matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what secrets the device might reveal, he would protect her with his life, and together they would find a way to end this war once and for all. Raymond and Talon burst from the crumbling outpost, dust and debris tumbling around them. They stumbled into the open, gasping for air. The once vibrant Evora city lay in ruins, the desolate landscape stretching out before them. An eerie silence hung over the rubble, broken only by the sound of their labored breathing. Suddenly the crunch of approaching footsteps shattered the stillness. Raymond spun around, pushing Talon behind him. He raised his weapon, finger tense on the trigger. Shadows shifted in the ruins. Raymond narrowed his eyes, ready to face whatever new threat emerged. To his shock, a group of haggard Evora survivors stepped into the light. Their scales were dull and scratched, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Among them, a familiar face caught Raymond's gaze. His breath caught in his throat. It was Zephyr, his old Evora friend and ally, who he had thought died in a previous battle. "Raymond?" Zephyr croaked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "Is that really you?" Raymond lowered his weapon slowly, hardly daring to believe his eyes. "Zephyr, but how? I thought you were dead." Zephyr shook his head. "No, I survived, barely. We've been hiding in the ruins, scavenging what we can, evading both human and Evora forces." Raymond glanced at the other survivors, their faces gaunt and wary. "What happened here? What's going on?" Raymond's mind raced, trying to process this revelation. Zephyr's gaze fell on Talon, who peeked out from behind Raymond's legs. Raymond nodded. "She is. We found a strange Evora device. It reacted to her somehow." Zephyr's eyes widened. "The device, of course, it's the key. The shadow scales are searching for it. I think Talon may be the only one who can unlock its secrets, unravel their plot." A chilling cry ripped through the air, making them all freeze. Raymond knew that sound all too well. Nethounds. A pack of the monstrous war beasts emerged from the shadows, led by a massive, scarred alpha. Their eyes gleamed with predatory hunger, fixed on Raymond and Talon. Zephyr and the other survivors moved swiftly, forming a defensive perimeter around Raymond and the girl. They readied makeshift weapons, preparing for the fight of their lives. Raymond hesitated, torn between his military instincts and his trust in his old friend. The Nethounds closed in, their growls rumbling through the ruins. Raymond knew he had to make a choice, and fast. The fate of not just Talon, but the entire war, hung in the balance. The Alpha Nethound coiled its muscles, ready to spring. Raymond's grip tightened on his weapon. He had to decide now whether to stand with Zephyr and the Evora, or to treat them as the enemy his training demanded. In that split second, Raymond knew his choice would shape the course of the conflict, and the future of both their worlds. The Nethounds lunged, and Raymond. With a burst of adrenaline coursing through his veins, Raymond hurled a clutch of pulse grenades towards the charging Nethounds, his swift action buying them precious seconds. The grenades detonated in a blinding flare, the shockwave and debris creating a temporary barrier between the survivors and their pursuers. "This way!" Zephyr hissed urgently, gesturing for Raymond and Talon to follow him. Without hesitation, the soldier grabbed Talon's small hand, and together they raced after the Evora survivors, plunging into a nearby network of underground tunnels just as the Nethound's furious snarls echoed behind them. The tunnels were dank and musty, the air thick with the weight of centuries. Zephyr led the way, his scales glistening in the dim light of ancient bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, the Evora warrior revealed that these tunnels were once part of an ancient Evora city, long since abandoned and forgotten by time. Their footsteps echoed through the winding corridors, each sound amplified by the oppressive silence that hung heavy in the air. Raymond's heart pounded in his chest, his senses on high alert for any sign of pursuit. Talon clung to his side, her small form trembling with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. At last, Zephyr brought them to a halt before a nondescript section of wall. With a deft touch, he manipulated a series of hidden switches, and a portion of the wall slid away, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. The group stepped inside, their eyes widening at the sight that greeted them. The chamber was filled with an array of strange, glowing artifacts and ancient inscriptions that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Raymond's gaze was drawn to a cracked, ornate mirror that dominated the center of the room. As he approached, he felt a sudden vibration against his chest. Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew Talon's device, which had begun to glow and hum in resonance with the mirror's power. Suddenly the mirror's surface rippled and distorted like water disturbed by a stone. A shadowy figure coalesced within its depths, its form indistinct and ever-shifting. When it spoke, Raymond's suit automatically translated the ancient Evora dialect, the words sending a chill down his spine. "I am Nexus of the Shadow Scales," the figure intoned, its voice a sibilant whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Your pathetic war is merely a means to an end, a way to weaken both your races and pave the way for our ascension." Raymond's mind reeled at the implications of Nexus's words. The entire conflict, all the death and destruction, had been orchestrated by this mysterious faction for their own nefarious purposes. Anger and disbelief warred within him as he struggled to process the revelation. "Surrender the girl and the device," Nexus demanded, its shadowy form pulsing with barely contained menace. "They are crucial to our plans, and you are powerless to stop us." Raymond's grip tightened on his weapon as he glared at the figure in the mirror. He opened his mouth to respond, to tell Nexus exactly where they could shove their plans, when a flicker of movement in the mirror's reflection caught his eye. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as Raymond spun around, his eyes widening in horror at the sight of the scarred Nethound Alpha, lunging towards him, its jaws aimed directly at his throat. In that instant, he realized the true extent of the Shadow Scale's machinations. The Nethounds were not simply mindless beasts, but cunning predators, working in concert with their masters to bring about the downfall of both humans and Evora alike. As the Nethound's razor-sharp teeth closed in, Raymond knew that he had only seconds to act. The fate of not just himself and Talon, but of the entire war, hung in the balance. With a shout of defiance, with a burst of adrenaline, Raymond hurled himself to the side, narrowly evading the Nethound's vicious lunge. The beast's momentum carried it forward, its massive bulk slamming into the ancient mirror with a sickening crunch. The mirror shattered into a million glittering shards, Nexus's malevolent visage flickering and fading as the glass rained down upon the stone floor. In the mirror's place, a swirling vortex of energy burst to life, its pull so strong that it began to drag the chamber's contents into its churning depths. Raymond seized Talon, clutching her tightly to his chest as he grabbed for the strange device with his free hand. Around them, Zephyr and the other Evora survivors clung desperately to the walls, their claws scrabbling for purchase against the vortex's relentless pull. At the center of the maelstrom, the Nethound howled in agony, its body caught in the grip of the swirling energies. The creature's nanite-infused hide began to disintegrate, its flesh and metal components ripped apart piece by piece. The beast's screams echoed through the chamber, mingling with the roar of the vortex in a cacophony of horror. Amidst the chaos, a glint of light caught Raymond's eye. There, emerging from the shattered remains of the mirror's frame, was a small, glowing orb. Acting on pure instinct, Raymond lunged forward, his fingers closing around the orb, just as the vortex reached its peak intensity. A blinding flash of light engulfed the chamber, searing Raymond's vision and forcing him to shield his eyes. As the light faded, the vortex collapsed in on itself with a final shuddering gasp. Raymond, Talon, and the Evora survivors found themselves transported to a strange, ethereal realm, a world of swirling mists and pulsating energy. The very air seemed to hum with power, the ground beneath their feet thrumming with an ancient primal force. In Raymond's hand, the orb began to glow brighter, its surface shimmering with an inner light. Suddenly, a series of complex holographic patterns and equations burst forth from the orb, dancing in the air around them like ghostly specters. Talon's eyes widened with recognition, her voice trembling as she spoke. "The prophecy," she whispered, her gaze fixed upon the shimmering patterns. "These are the signs foretold by the ancient Evora seers. They speak of a chosen one, a being who will unite the warring factions and bring an end to the Shadow Scale's dark machinations." As the group huddled together, their minds racing to decipher the prophecy's cryptic meaning, a chilling realization dawned on Raymond. The Shadow Scale's plan, the very reason behind the war that had consumed their worlds, was never about conquest or domination. No, their true goal was something far more sinister, far more devastating. The Shadow Scales sought the eradication of both human and Evora life, the complete and utter annihilation of their species. In the ashes of their destruction, a new order would rise, a twisted, malevolent force that would reshape the very fabric of the universe itself. With this newfound knowledge burning in his mind, Raymond understood the true weight of the task that lay before them. He and Talon, the unlikely pair bound by fate and circumstance, were now the only ones who could hope to stop the shadow scales and prevent the obliteration of all they held dear. The ethereal realm pulsed around them, the swirling mists and shimmering energies a stark reminder of the forces at play. Raymond's grip tightened on the orb, its warmth seeping into his skin as he met Talon's gaze. In her eyes, he saw a reflection of his own determination, a steely resolve to face the darkness head-on and emerge victorious. Together, they would unravel the secrets of the prophecy, forge alliances where none had existed before, and stand against the shadow scale's malevolent machinations. The fate of 2 worlds, of countless lives, rested upon their shoulders, a burden they could not, would not, fail to bear. As the holographic patterns continued to dance around them, Raymond and Talon exchanged a silent nod, a promise sealed in the face of unimaginable odds. They would fight, they would struggle, they would claw their way through the darkness, all in the name of the light they sought to protect. And in that moment, amid the swirling mists and pulsating energies of an alien realm, Raymond and Talon took the first steps on a journey that would change the course of history, a path that would lead them to the very heart of the shadow scale's dark designs and beyond. Raymond, Talon, and the Evora survivors ventured deeper into the ethereal realm, their footsteps echoing through the swirling mists. The orb in Raymond's hand pulsed with a steady rhythm, guiding them towards the ancient Evora temples that held the fragments of the prophecy. As they approached the first temple, its weathered stone walls covered in intricate carvings, Talon froze, her eyes glazing over as if caught in a trance. "This way," she whispered, her voice distant and otherworldly. "The prophecy calls to me." Raymond and Zephyr exchanged a glance, unease settling in their guts as they followed Talon into the temple's shadowy interior. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ancient incense and musty parchment. Talon moved with purpose, her small form weaving through the labyrinthine corridors until they reached a hidden chamber. There, etched into the stone walls, was a fragment of the prophecy. Talon ran her fingers over the glyphs, her lips moving silently as she deciphered their meaning. "The shadow scales," she murmured. "They were once guardians, tasked with maintaining the balance between worlds. But something corrupted them, twisted their purpose." Raymond's mind raced as he pieced together the fragments they found in each subsequent temple. A cataclysmic event in the distant past, a corrupted leader, a hidden city that held the key to restoring balance. With each revelation, the weight of their quest grew heavier on his shoulders. As they journeyed deeper into the ethereal realm, guided by the orb's pulsing light, a chill settled over the group. The mists thickened, taking on an almost tangible quality, and the air grew heavy with an unseen menace. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialized from the swirling vapors, their translucent forms clad in ancient Evora armor. Raymond's hand tightened on his weapon, ready to defend against any threat, but Zephyr held up a hand. "Wait," he said, his voice low and urgent. "These are not enemies, but fallen warriors, bound to this realm by the shadow scale's dark magic." One of the ghostly warriors drifted forward, its spectral eyes fixing upon Raymond and Talon. "You are the ones spoken of in the prophecy," it intoned, its voice a whisper on the wind. "We once served the shadow scales, but now we see the truth. We will guide you to the lost city, where the fate of our worlds will be decided." With the ghostly warriors leading the way, the group pressed on, the mists parting before them like a curtain drawn back to reveal a hidden stage. In the distance, the lost city's towering spires and shimmering energy domes came into view, a beacon of hope amidst the ethereal gloom. As they approached the city's central temple, Raymond's senses tingled with a familiar unease. He scanned the shadows, his instincts screaming that they were not alone. Talon too seemed to sense the presence, her small form pressing closer to Raymond's side. A figure emerged from the temple's yawning entrance, its form twisted and corrupted, pulsating with an aura of dark energy. Raymond's blood ran cold as he recognized the distorted features of Nexus, the shadow-scale leader they had encountered in the Mirror's realm. "Congratulations," Nexus sneered, his voice a distorted echo that sent shivers down Raymond's spine. "You have come far, but your journey is far from over." With a wave of his hand, Nexus summoned forth a legion of nightmarish warriors, their forms a grotesque blend of Evora and Nethound, bristling with dark energy. Raymond and the others fell into a defensive formation, ready to face the horrors that stood between them and their destiny. The ghostly Evora warriors surged forward, their spectral blades clashing with the shadow-scale abominations, in a battle that reverberated through the ethereal realm. Raymond, Talon, and Zephyr fought alongside their ghostly allies, their actions guided by the prophecy's words, and the knowledge that failure would mean the end of everything they held dear. As the battle raged, Raymond's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide against Nexus and his dark forces. The orb in his hand grew warm, its pulsing light intensifying with each passing moment. He knew that the key to their victory lay within the lost city, but reaching it would mean facing the full might of the Shadowscales and their corrupted leader. With a roar of defiance, Raymond charged forward, Talon and Zephyr at his side, ready to meet their destiny head-on. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and they would not rest until the prophecy was fulfilled and the Shadowscales were defeated once and for all. As the Shadowscale warriors charged forward, their twisted forms snarling and gnashing in the ethereal gloom, Raymond and the Evora survivors met them head-on. The clash of weapons and the crackle of energy filled the air as they fought desperately, each side pushing their abilities to the breaking point. Raymond's pulse rifle blazed, the bolts of searing light cutting through the Shadowscale ranks. Beside him, Zephyr and the other Evora lashed out with their own weapons, their ghostly allies darting in and out of the fray, spectral blades flashing. But for every Shadowscale that fell, two more seemed to take its place, their numbers endless and their fury relentless. Raymond gritted his teeth, his armor dented and scorched, his body aching with the strain of battle. Suddenly a blinding burst of energy erupted from Talon's small form, the young Evora's connection to the prophecy surging to new heights. The Shadowscale warriors staggered, their advance faltering as the wave of power washed over them. "Now," Raymond shouted, seizing the opening, "push forward into the temple." Together, they fought their way through the stunned Shadowscales, Raymond and Zephyr forming a living shield around Talon as they battled up the temple steps. The ghostly Evora warriors rallied around them, their spectral forms flickering in and out of existence as they held the line against the recovering enemy. Inside the temple, an eerie, pulsating light filled the chamber, emanating from an ancient Evora artifact that hovered above a raised dais. Raymond felt the orb in his pocket hum in resonance, its energy synchronizing with the artifact's own. Talon approached the dais as if in a trance, her eyes fixed on the artifact. The ghostly warriors gathered around her, their whispers guiding her as she began to decipher the inscriptions that scrolled across its surface. Her words trailed off, her face paling as she read further. "But it requires a sacrifice, a willing soul to bind the Shadowscales to this realm forever." A heavy silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the distant sounds of battle, as the Shadowscale warriors clashed with the ghostly Evora outside. Raymond's heart sank as he realized the terrible choice that lay before them. But before he could speak, a thunderous boom shook the temple, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. The Shadowscales had broken through the defenses, their twisted forms pouring into the chamber like a nightmarish tide. In that moment, Raymond knew what he had to do. He stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "I'll do it. I'll be the sacrifice." Talon's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, Raymond, you can't. There has to be another way." But Raymond just shook his head, a bittersweet smile on his face. It's the only way, Talon, the only way to save everyone, to end this war once and for all. He took her small hand in his, squeezing it gently. You have to be strong now, Talon, you have to finish this. With a heavy heart, Talon nodded, turning back to the artifact as Raymond took his place at the center of the dais. The ghostly Evora warriors formed a circle around them, their spectral forms shielding them from the advancing shadow scales. Talon began the ritual, her voice rising and falling in an ancient, haunting melody. The artifact pulsed in response, its energy swirling around Raymond in a vortex of light and shadow. Pain lanced through Raymond's body as the ritual took hold, his every nerve screaming in agony. But he held fast, his thoughts fixed on Talon, on the brave Evora survivors, on the countless lives he knew his sacrifice would save. As the ritual reached its climax, Raymond locked eyes with Talon one last time, a wordless goodbye passing between them. Then, in a blinding flash of light, the temple chamber vanished, the shadow-scale warriors' howls fading into silence as their forms dissipated into the swirling mists. And Raymond, his body now a conduit for the cosmic energies that bound the realms together, felt his essence merging with the artifact, his mortal form dissolving as he became something more, something eternal. Talon emerged from the temple, the Evora survivors at her side, the orb in her hand now dark and lifeless. Tears streamed down her face as she looked out over the ethereal landscape, the weight of Raymond's sacrifice heavy in her heart. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.